Tyreek Hill, whether you love him, hate him, or something in between, he is staying with the team this year. And he's going to be an absolutely critical piece to the success of this team, to Tua, to McDaniel's future, to what's going on overall for the success of this franchise this season. And maybe even determine how this regime plays out. He had a terrible year last year. People talking about the cover two. I talked about the cover two and the leverage of the linebackers. Mitigating or curtailing his Waddle and Tua's success. And there's truth to it, 100%. But there is a little bit more. And what the Dolphins did in free agency might unlock some of the potential that we've seen of the passing game of the Dolphins. I'm going to get into that with some hard statistics and some real facts. Now, disclaimer, this does not mean Tua is going to be MVP. We're going to go to the Super Bowl, any of that, because you're not passing yourself to victory. It's an important piece. You need the defense. You need balance. You need to run the football. You need to score points. And you need to run the football in the red zone very critically. But this is a major driver when you've invested this much. And as much as I don't like Greer, as much as I don't like the finesse build, I've got to be truthful and honest. And this evidence is clear. And I've talked about it in the past, but I'm going to dial it in this time. So before I get into it, guys, I'm going to be with Steve Malloy tonight and Darius. You've seen him do some great work here about Tua's reads. Guy played D1 college. Tonight at 6:30 Central Time, we're going to do a roundtable. I don't know who else is going to be there, but it's going to be a good show, so definitely check it out. Also, the likes, the subscribes, the comments, the views, all that stuff feeds the algorithm gods, makes my sponsors happy, and keeps me in the gig. So please help me out with that stuff if you aren't already. And if you are, I am very grateful. Now, one quick thing, because if I don't do it, I'm going to forget. I love the comments. I got a comment here by B Stuck That Poet. At A's per Ed, this move reminds me of when we signed Sony Michel to be our power back, and he ended up not making the team. Now, this is in regards to Alexander, our new running back, and Madison. I almost forgot his name there. So some people, initially I thought it was a good addition because I remembered him from the Vikings. Then I heard Alf say he really didn't like it. Someone put a comment and said this guy is done. I did some statistics showing that it's on a downgrade. But I thought this was a really good point because Sony Michel had a phenomenal year by the time he got to us. And then he was toast. I'm not saying it is. I just thought this was a good comment, and it did resonate with me as a possibility. So I wanted to put it out there and give credit where credit is due. Now, the main thing with Hill, guys, he's small. He's not the best contested catcher. And so where he's positioned, it increases or decreases the potentiality of what he can do. I've talked about this. When you put him out to the boundaries, because he is kind of small, and the boundary does limit the route tree, he's not as good as when you put him in slot. And I had one guy say, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, I'm going to go show you right here. You can take a look at this graphic here. Tyreek Hill's slot percentage. 2020, when he had an epic season, it was 58%. You go to the year before, 2019, his worst season, and it was much like you see here with the Dolphins. It was about 30, 40%. You go to 2018 when he had a phenomenal year, and it was closer to 50%. But 2020 was an epic year for him. And then 21 was a great year for us, 49%. 22, for the Chiefs, I should say. And then for us, he had the great season. It was 38%. But you see the trend going down. 2023, 36%. 2024, 31%. And so Hill, when he's in that slot position, he threatens the whole field, forces the safeties on both sides to really hold their ground. When he's out at the boundary, that opposite safety, he does have to pay attention, but not as much because the time it does take, even with Hill's speed, to get out there and to get across the entire field, usually that's not what the Dolphins are about when they're throwing at 204. Now, it's a little bit more. Remember, guys, in 2022, his clean time was 75%. 3 out of 4 throws was 235. The next 2 seasons, almost, it was over 3/4. So it was maybe like 77%, but almost 8 out of 10 was 204 to do 207. Huge drop. And when you drop the majority of throws like that, when he's out of boundary, that opposite safety isn't as concerned. But when he's in its slot, it freezes the both of them because you can run a post corner, you can run a post, you can run a full corner from slot, and both guys have to hold their ground. And when he's in that slot, it does make the pocket post more viable because even if the linebackers play high leverage, they can't really drop often enough to the leverage they need. But when he's out at boundary, it buys that few extra fractions of the second and makes it more difficult. Now, I'm not telling you the Dolphins are going to the Super Bowl, whatever, but I'm here to tell you that this free agency did bring in a guy that will allow Hill to play slot him a little bit more. We brought in Westbrook, you can see here. He played slot 96 snaps compared to 373. Because of his height, he's around a 4.5 40. He can test the depth. He's a big guy, but he plays boundary. And so you'll be able to, this is what we were hoping with OBJ, to have him at the boundary and then Waddle at the other boundary, and then Hill can play his slot. Malik Washington, you see here, 141 and 123. He's more of a slot guy. Eskridge, he's 2 and 20. He could play to wide, but he's not really going to be a guy. Taj Washington, he's a slot as well. Easy. We'll see what he can do. I don't think he's a boundary. It's very tough to be a boundary, but Westbrook does open things up. Hill can be the slot. He could be the boundary. You could have him and Waddle and Malik Washington, or on occasion, and start raising that ratio out of the 30 mark, maybe into the 40s. And then if you add in Daniels and maybe get yourself another guard, not Eichenberg, and you could start raising the time, the clean time to throw into the teens at least, which isn't what it was in 22, but it's far better than the last 2 years. And then you have Hill playing slot. You have an opportunity to get this pass game back on track, and it is viable. It's still going to be difficult if you don't run the football inside. It's still going to be difficult if the linebackers aren't chomping at the bit on occasion to take care of that A and B gap. It's still going to be difficult if you're not being blitzed, but this will improve whether they do that or not. If you can block a little bit longer and play Hill at slot, it will open things up. This is clear. The trend cycle is clear. Hill is far more effective in that slot, and it puts crazy pressure on a defense when he's there. Conversely, if he's stuck on the boundaries, not so much. And you can see with him and Waddle at the boundaries most of the time and no run game, teams can stop you. And no blitzing. So let's see how it plays out. This interior run game is a big deal, but it does look like they tried last year with OBJ to get him in here, to get Hill more in the slot. They've got to see this. And it looks like with Westbrook, this is the plan as well. Curtis saying, check me out tonight with O'Daris on Steve Malloy. It's going to be a good one. I had a great time 2 weeks ago with Greg, who's a former Division I offensive lineman. It's going to be a good one tonight. So Curtis saying, be well, go Fins. Curtis out. Start building your own online sports book today by getting signed up with aceperhead.com service that'll allow you to book action on sports from all around the world.